Alright, so in this video we're going to learn about an important math concept called rounding. And to help you understand what rounding is, the best way to think about it is how numbers are actually used. So most of the time, numbers are used to represent an amount of things. For example, the number of miles from a supermarket, or how many days it is until your birthday, or even how many students went to your school. So if we were to take the example of how many people went to your school, most of you would give like a rough estimation of like 2,000 kids went to my school. And this is your example of rounding. So even though you know that there's probably more or less than 2,000 kids that go to your school, you give that rough estimate. And so this kind of shows what rounding is. Rounding is basically making a less precise version of a number. And so there's multiple ways that you can round depending on the level of precision that you really need. And the best way to kind of understand how to round something is to take a look at a number line. All right, so here we have a number line with our example number 1125. And looking at the number line, we're trying to round this number to the nearest tenth. So since our number is 1125, we can either round it to 1120 or 1130. And so a known fact in rounding is that when you have an in-between number like 5, we just commonly round up. So it's any number that is 5 and above, we would round upwards, and any number that is 5 or that is below 5, we would round downward. So given our example number here, we would round upwards towards 1130 instead of going downwards towards 1120. So here we have another number line with our example number plotted. So looking at this example of 1125, we're given two options when we're rounding to the nearest 100th place. We can either round 1125 upwards towards 1200, or we can round it downwards towards 1100. And so if you see on the number line, 1125 is closer to 1100, so that would indicate that we should round downwards. And so the easiest way to look at that also is given the number in the 10th spot, which is 2, since that is below 5, we would round downwards. In this additional and final number line of our example number, we can see that 1125 has two options to be rounded towards in the 1000s place. We can either round towards just 1000, or we can round upwards towards 2000. And so, as you can see on the number line, 1125 is closer to 1000 than it is to 2000. So we would round downwards. And another way to look at it is we go to the 100th spot on the actual number. And since there's a 1 there, and we know that that's below 5, we would round downwards. And I'll touch on that later. Okay, so at this point, I bet you're wondering, why would we ever really need to make a number less precise in the first place? So rounding can often make calculations a lot easier. So it would be a lot easier to quickly add, for example, 300 and 500 than it would be to add 312 and 498. Or sometimes you just don't need to be very precise when you're actually doing a problem. Like you might not need to know that your dog weighs 55.83297 kilograms. You could just round that off to 55.8. And some numbers, like repeating decimals or irrational numbers, have to be rounded off because we can't just keep on writing decimal digits forever. So yeah, now that you know now that you know why it's important to round and how we can use it, let's focus on some example problems and how we can kind of strengthen your idea of rounding. Now, if you watched my last video, you would know that the number system is based off of digits and number places. So each digit of a number occupies a certain number place, and each number place is named according to the amount it represents. So it's really important that you know these names whenever you're rounding, because in most questions, you'll be asked to round to a specific number place. For example, you may be asked to round a number to the nearest 10 or the nearest 100th. Or you might even be asked to round off a number to the nearest 1000th. So you may even be asked sometimes to round to the nearest whole number. And this is just another way of asking you to round to these given places where the digits actually are. And so the first step is to pay very close attention to which number place you need to round to. And that number place is important because it represents the smallest unit of counting that you're going to keep in your rounded version of the number. In fact, that number place is so important that you're just going to have to give it a special name, for example, like the target place. And so when you're rounding a number, it means you're making a new, less precise version of it. So in that new number, any digits that are in the number places smaller than that target spot will automatically get replaced with zeros. And in most cases, any digits that are in number places larger than the target spot will automatically be kept the same in the new rounded version of the number. I'll go over this later in the video. Now, when looking at the actual target number itself, you either have the option to round up or down by 1 from that given number. And easiest way to kind of determine whether you're going to round up or down is you look to the number the right of that. And if that number is above 5, you round upwards. And if that number is below 5, you round downwards. And then if that number is 5, you would round upwards also, which is just another kind of known thing that they make. So using what we just learned, let's go over this list of example problems, and we can figure out how to round these properly. So given the first number, we have 12, and the target number is 1. So that means it's rounding to the nearest 10th. So would we round this number either up to 20 or down towards 10? And the way we would determine that is we take a look at the digits to the right, which is 2. And since one of our known rules that any number that is 4 and below gets rounded down, we would round this down to 10. And then look at the next number, which is 114. It's asking us to round to the nearest 10th again. And so we just take a look at that number to the right, see that it's 4, which is less than 5, and then we would round downwards towards 110. For the third one, it's asking us to round to the nearest 10th again, and we look to the number to the right, and we see that it is 7, which we know is greater than 5, so we'd round upwards, and that would be 60. So for the next one, which is 1334, rounding the nearest 10th again, we look to the right, see it's 4, that's less than 5, we would round down to 1330. Looking at the fourth or fifth one down, 1488, we see that the number to the right is greater than 5, so we'd round upwards, and then we get 1490. And then for the last one, we see that it's 97, and the digit to the right is above 5, so we'd round upwards, and so the 10th digit increases by 1, and then we get 100 as our answer. All right, so that's what I got for you today on rounding. I hope you guys got something for this. I'll attach some worksheets down below and some other fun resources. So I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.